Welcome to VetriView. In this video, I'm going to talk about important questions that you must prepare before your Anatomy Paper 1 exam. I'm also going to give some tips on how to write your answer so you can score good marks in your exam. So first, let us see what is the syllabus of Anatomy Paper 1 as per 2016 VCI model. So first we have Unit 1, which will include general anatomy, so general osteology, arthrology, myology. It is written incorrect here. It is not mycology, myology, study of muscles. Then angiology, neurology, aesthesiology, and splenonology. Then Unit 2 is forelimb, Unit 3 head and neck, and Unit 4 thorax. So you can see the syllabus is very easy for the paper 1 as compared to the paper 2. Then what are the important questions which are asked in the exam for LAQ? If you don't know what is LAQ, it is long answer type question. So it means that there are essay type questions. You have to describe the subject or the matter that is being asked thoroughly. Okay, you have to mention everything and you have to be very thorough with your study of these topics as well. So first question that I've written is describe in detail the humerus of ox and compare with that of the horse, dog, and pig. This is a standard question for the osteology portion. Okay, every question about the bone will be asked in this manner. Describe in detail the dash of dash, compare with that of dash dash dash. Okay, so in this case we have described in detail the humerus of ox and compare with that of horse, dog, and pig. So this question is of course from forelimb. Very important question. So 3 ticks means extremely important. You should prioritize it first. Humerus, very important bone. Now one thing to note here is that I've written of ox. Just look at this third question. Describe in detail the scapula of horse. So in the exam they can ask you describe in detail the humerus of horse and compare with that of ox, dog, and pig. Okay, they can change the species, but it shouldn't affect you if you are prepared well enough. Okay, so what you have to write in the exam? First thing, draw your diagram. Okay, every anatomy LAQ question must start with a diagram. Okay, if you're writing an answer, you must start with a well-labeled diagram. Now, what is the meaning of a well-labeled diagram? First thing, this is a paper. It is not compulsory, but I'll suggest to you that you should make your diagram on one side. Okay, so either on the left side of the paper or the right side of paper. I usually go with the left side. Why? Because you have to label the things on the one side. Like if I'm drawing on the left side, then I'll draw on the right side, but all articles or all structure should be labeled on that side only. You don't want to do this kind of thing, like one labeling is on the left side, one labeling is on the right side. It doesn't look good. Okay, and it will not make a good impression on the examiner. So that is why you should stick to one thing. I usually go with diagram on the left side and labeling on the right side. Then you have to name the diagram or give a title to the diagram, but you have to write it below the diagram. Okay, don't start your answer like this: humerus of ox, then diagram, and then labeling. Okay, this is very poor method. You won't score good marks with this. What you have to do, you will draw the humerus, do the labeling, and then give the title humerus of ox. And this is not enough. You have to mention the side, the view, everything. Okay, so for example, if I'm drawing the diagram of left humerus of ox, lateral view, because you can have lateral view, you can have medial view. In certain bone we also see cranial and caudal view. So what you'll write left humerus of ox, lateral view. Okay, this is must, otherwise you will get marks deducted. Now there's a bonus that if you want, you can mention the caudal and cranial aspect as well. So you can mention that this direction is caudal, this direction is cranial in the diagram itself. It is not compulsory, but if you want to make a very good impression on the examiner, then of course you can do this. Okay, but you must mention the side and the view. Okay, if you are drawing the right humerus of ox, then mention right humerus of ox and don't just write humerus. Okay, you will definitely get your marks deducted. You must mention the species, on which side the bone is, and what is the view that you're looking at. Okay, if it is lateral, then lateral, medial, then medial. Okay, then compare with that of horse, dog, and pig. So what you will do, again, let us come to this page. We have drawn the diagram, mention the title, then we'll describe the humerus of ox and then we'll come to species differentiation. When you're describing a bone, what you have to do? First, define it. Okay, so humerus is a long bone. It is cylindrical, twisted. Okay, it is a long bone of like that. You have to mention it, and you can just make one sentence for each bone. Okay, just write it somewhere and then remember it. Okay, so what is the definition of humerus? Just define humerus and then remember it. Okay, so first mention the definition of the bone. Okay, what will the definition include? It must include the type of bone. So if it is a long bone or short bone or irregular bone, whatever it is. Second thing, it must mention its location. So if it is the bone of shoulder region, then mention it. If it is the shoulder bone of arm region, as in the case of humerus, you have to mention it is the bone of the arm region. Second thing, you have to mention the joints in case of bones. Okay, so if we are talking about humerus, then you have to mention that it will form the shoulder joint proximally with the scapula and the elbow joint distally with the radius and ulna. Okay, that you have to mention, and all this will come under the definition portion. Then we'll have sides, surfaces, and surfaces, borders, and extremities. So humerus has 4 borders, 4 surfaces, 2 extremities. Then you will start with either of these topics. Okay, so let us say I'm starting with the extremities. I'll say it has 2 extremities. We have proximal and distal extremity. Proximal extremity. Then I'll enlist the various structures which are in the proximal extremity. So for example, proximal extremity, it has head, it has neck, it has the tuberosities, and it has a groove. So these are the 4 structures that are present. Now head will articulate with the glenoid cavity of the scapula. I'll write it just there. You don't need to mention anything for the neck. Then tuberosities, there are 2, lateral and medial. Okay, so what are the attachment of the bones that you will also mention? Okay, this is very important. Do note this thing, that whenever you are describing any bone, do write the attachment of the bone. Okay, so any origin and insertion of muscles, you have to write them. Then you will talk about the bicipital groove, and this is all about the proximal extremity. You have to keep this portion very short and sweet. Okay, you have to write your answer to the point, because anatomy paper are usually very lengthy and you might not get enough time to write everything. Okay, so what are the points that we discussed here? Start your answer with a diagram. Make the diagram on the left side, do the labeling on the right side. This is not compulsory, but this is what I like. Then always give the title to the diagram just below the diagram. Okay, not above it. It will also always come below the diagram. Then it must mention the species, the site, the view, everything. Then when you're starting when you're starting the description, always start with the definition. Okay, of course it is not possible to have the perfect definition of all the structures, so you just make something. Okay, it is not it doesn't need to be very perfect, but it must mention certain things like the location. Okay, then type of the bone if you are talking about a bone, and if you are talking about certain organs, then you must mention the use of the organ, its definition. Then after that you will come to the various things. Now compare with that of horse, dog, and pig. This portion is also important. So if the question is of 8 marks, then 4 marks will be given for humerus of ox and 4 marks given for the horse, dog, and pig. So what you are going to do, you are going to make another diagram for horse, but this time make the diagram very short, and you don't need to do the entire labeling. Now just label the things which are different. Okay, so if we are saying that the bicipital groove is notched, then just label bicipital groove and write notched. Okay, like that, and then write a few points. Usually 4 to 5 points are very good. You don't need to go anything above it. 4 points are definitely necessary. If you are writing just 2 to 3 points, then there is chance of deduction of marks. Okay, then describe in detail the radius and ulna of ox and compare with that of horse, dog, and pig. Again, very important, just like humerus. Describe in detail the scapula of horse and compare with that of ox, dog, and pig. I've just mentioned previously that they can ask you to describe in detail the structure of another species other than ox. Okay, so don't get confused in the exam, don't falter. It is very simple. And in case of scapula, it is a SAQ type question basically. Okay, here I've written it in LAQ because they can ask you it in LAQ, so prepare it like that. But most of the time Scapula is going to come under SAQ type questions. Then describe in detail the muscles of forearm and Manus region. The most important question in myology. Okay, whenever we are describing a muscle, what you have to do, you have to make a table. Okay, just make a simple table. So serial number, then make a heading first. Okay, just before the table, sorry. Make a heading. So muscles of the forearm and Manus region, then serial number, and then before the serial number again, I'm forgetting a lot of things. Muscles of forearm and Manus region, then you will write the classification. Okay, so what kind of classification? A lot of times when we are talking about muscle groups, we classify them into further groups, right? So here we'll say flexors and extensors. So you'll write extensor group, and then you'll make a table. So serial number, then you'll write the name of the muscle, then origin, insertion, blood supply, nerve supply, and also function. Okay, so what are the points that you have to mention? The name of the muscle, the function of the muscle, the origin, insertion, blood supply, and nerve supply. And then you'll just continue this table for all the muscles. Okay, so this is how you should write the questions of myology. Okay, this is very important because there are a lot of muscles. Then that is why I'll recommend that you should start your muscles with forearm and Manus region, because this is the question that is going to be asked in the exam for LAQ. For other muscles like muscles of the arm and shoulder girdle, they will be asked in OT type questions. So they can ask you like, what is the blood supply of deltoideus muscle? What is the insertion of bicipital biceps brachii muscle? Like that. Okay. Then describe in detail the joints of forelimb in ox. Again, very important question from arthrology. Similar to that muscle question, you have to make a table for this. Write a heading, joints of the forelimb of ox, then serial number, name of joint, bones involved. And here you can write like bones involved when proximally and distally. Then you can write the ligaments involved, the movements that are allowed. Okay, whenever we are talking about joints, the movement that is allowed by the joint is very important. And type of joint. So if it is a synovial joint, if it is a fibrous joint, and even if it is a synovial joint, there are further subclassification like ball and socket joint, hinge joint. You have to mention them as well. Okay, and whenever the question is about muscles and joints, just make a table. This is the easiest way. And for the examiner, it is very easy to just see everything, right? So it will give off a very good impression. Then describe in detail the essential structures forming a synovial joint. Write about the type of synovial joint on the basis of movement with examples. Okay, this is not meant, it is joint. Not so much important question, but I've still written here because sometimes they do ask and if you're not studied it, then you cannot answer it properly. Okay. Then describe in detail the structure of ventricles of brain. Very, very, very important question. A lot of these questions I have already discussed in my previous video. So humerus of ox, radius of ox, scapula of ox, then structures of the ventricles of brain. All these topics I have already made a video on. So you can watch them and I'll recommend you very much because in those videos, I basically gave you a model answer. You can say that. Okay, especially the ventricles of brain. I'm very proud of that video. Then what is brachial plexus? And list the nerves of brachial plexus and describe in detail the pathway of radial, ulnar or medial nerve. Okay, so what is going on here? This is again very, very, very important question. First, what is brachial plexus? Whenever this question is asked, what you have to write? The location of the brachial plexus, the origin of the brachial plexus, and brachial plexus is supplying which region. This you'll mention. Then you'll enlist the nerves of the brachial plexus, and then you have to describe in detail the pathway of any one nerve. Now this is not optional. They will give you radial nerve, or they'll give you ulnar nerve, or they'll give you medial nerve. Okay, that is why I've just written them in oblique. So in the question, you will have one out of these three. Okay, they'll not give you any option though. So prepare the pathway in detail for all these three nerves. Again, I made a video on brachial plexus, so I'll definitely recommend you to watch that video. Then describe in detail various branches of trigeminal or vagus or facial nerve. Again, not so much important, but sometimes it is asked in the exam, and if you haven't studied them, then you'll definitely get confused. Okay, and here they can ask you the branches of trigeminal nerve or vagus nerve or facial nerve, not all three. Okay, describe the topography of heart. Describe in detail the internal structure of right atrium or left atrium or right atrium or left atrium, left ventricle, sorry. Again, very, very important and very lengthy question, to be honest. Okay, so topography of heart, you are going to talk about the external structure of the heart, the relation with other organs, the location, everything. And then you have to describe in detail the internal structure of any one chamber. Okay, they will not give you any option in this as well. So most of the time they ask about the internal structure of right atrium. So if you don't have time, then I'll suggest that you start with the right atrium only. Okay, memorize the internal structure of the right atrium, all these openings, all the important structures. Left atrium, right ventricle, and left ventricle are not so much common. You'll rarely see them in the exam. Okay. Then describe the arteries emerging from the aortic arch. Describe in detail the pathway of subclavian artery. Again, a very lengthy question. If you want to leave it, you can leave it. But if it is asked in the exam, then if you haven't studied it, again, just like all the other topics, you are not going to be able to answer it. That is why I've written here. And it is a very big question. You have to memorize a lot. So if you have time, you should definitely go through this. Definitely after making sure that you have completed all these above topics. Then describe in detail the tongue of ox and compare with that of horse, dog, and pig. Again, very important question from splanknology. The tongue of ox and compare with that of horse, dog, and pig. You will have the same pattern here. So you'll start with the diagram, a very well labeled diagram. Then you'll talk about the structures of the tongue. When we are talking about the structures of the tongue, you have to mention the various muscles which are forming the tongue. You have to mention the various parts of the tongue. Okay, so we have the tip, we have the body, we have the root, like that. Then you have to talk about the papillae. Don't forget papillae. Okay, they are very important. And then you will compare it with that of horse, dog, and pig. Describe in detail the lungs of ox and compare with that of horse, dog, and pig. Again, I have made a video on this. So lungs, tongue, brachial plexus, ventricles of brain, and all these bones. I've already made videos on them. So if you want to check them out, then definitely check them out. I have made model answers for these questions. So if you are writing like that, you will definitely get maximum marks. Then describe in detail the anatomy of ear or internal ear or middle and internal ear. Okay, so every year there is some variation. So sometimes they just ask you the anatomy of the entire ear. Sometimes they just say, write about the inner ear or middle ear. When I gave the exam, they asked about the anatomy of middle ear only. Okay, so it is depending upon your luck if you get just middle ear or just internal ear. Very easy. And again, I hope you just get one part in your exam, not the entire ear. Otherwise, the question will become very lengthy. Then describe in detail the tunics of eyeball. Again, very, very important question from aesthesiology. Tunics of eyeball. So you have to describe the three tunics, right? And then you have to also mention all the substructures that are present in them. Now, for SAQ type question, I have not mentioned every question that is asked in the SAQ. I just mentioned some important topics that you must go through before attempting anything. So first is stay apparatus. Extremely, extremely important. It is present in horse and definitely asked as an SQ. Muscles of mastication, again important. If they are not asking an SQ, then definitely they can ask for objective type question. Cauda equina, cisterna chyli, sternum of fowl, then scapula of horse, just as I said, boundaries of thorax, nasal cavity, laryngeal cartilages, opening of pharynx, guttural pouches, they are present in horses, and sesamoid bone. Okay, so these are some important topics for SAQ. There are certain topics which are very important, but they are not asked in essay type questions, so in LAQ or SAQ. Rather, they are asked in OT type question. So topics like cranial nerves. Okay, so except trigeminal, vagus, and facial, the other cranial nerves are important for objective type questions. So they can ask you which is the only cranial nerve that emerges from the dorsal side of the brain. Okay, so you have to write which nerve is called the pathetic nerve, which is the largest cranial nerve, which is the largest nerve in the entire body, like that, which is the slenderest nerve. They can ask you a question, or they can ask you ocular nerve is supplying which structure. Okay, or the extraocular muscles are supplied by which nerves? So OT can be made from nerves. They can also ask you OT from bones, muscles. Muscles are very important area for OT type question. So they can definitely ask you, write the blood, mention the blood supply of deltoideus muscle, or they can ask you the insertion of a certain muscle, like let us say triceps brachii. Okay, or they can even ask you a structure like which muscle is inserted on which muscle inserts on deltoid tuberosity, like that. Okay, so be prepared for these OT type question. So this is it for this video. I hope you found this video useful. If so, hit the like button, share this video with your friends. They're definitely going to like it. And if you haven't, then subscribe to my channel. Thank you.